Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while, but this video is something I'm really excited about. It's a commissioned diptych painting. What a diptych is it's just two parts that go together to make a whole. This is one of my favorite geode paintings that I have done to date. It's got a lot of blues, greens, golds, and obviously a lot of glitter because I use that in every single one of my paintings. So if you want to see how to make this piece or something similar, just keep watching and I will show you all of the steps. So similar to how I've done this with all of my other paintings, I will list all of the materials that I use in the description box below so that you can go to the exact ones that I used. The first thing was the Mass Epoxy's resin, and then I used a variety of powdered pigments from Stardust Micas, Maron, and Jacquard. And then I used the pigment paste from Mrs. Colorberry and my favorite sparkle, the Painthuffer Metal Flake. I also used some iridescent paper, Mod Podge, two 12 by 12 panels, and then the usual things that I use with my resin paintings: primer, sandpaper, gloves, respirator mask, mixing cups, sticks. I also used a glazing medium and some Starfire Direct fire glass. The very first step, I just primed and sealed my board with Kills, and then what I did was I used my Mod Podge to attach the iridescent paper onto the panels. So I used a dark blue and a light blue in that iridescent paper, and I gave them both about 2 coats of Mod Podge just to seal the paper onto the panel. And then what this was going to do is just to provide an underlying iridescent kind of underlayer to the geode itself. It's mostly going to be visible under the stones because they are glass, they're clear, and then when the light hits, the colored glass has a little bit of an iridescent shift now because of the paper that was underlying. So this clip is just me painting on the Mod Podge and just sealing the paper to the panel after it had been primed. So I did about 2 coats on each. I let the panels dry completely in between each coat, and then I let them dry completely for a couple days before doing anything else. And the next step is I just sanded the sides to make sure they were nice and smooth. I used a variety of different sandpapers and sandpaper blocks of different grits. I just wanted to give it a nice smooth finish on the sides so that when I taped the edges before doing any resin, it would lie nice and flat and there would be no problem removing the tape after the fact. This way nothing could get under the tape and the sides would be nice and clean, so there would be less cleanup at the end step. Step is to lay out my fire glass and kind of figure out what design I wanted to go with for this Geode diptych. I used my Starfire Direct glass in the fire diamonds, and I also used some of the smaller fire glass pieces. So I did kind of like a half semicircle on both panels so that the design would carry over, and then once I mixed all my resin, I would go ahead and use clear just to seal those in place. For this piece, I used the Mass Epoxy's tabletop resin. I found out about it from Love Kelsey Ray on Instagram, and I actually really love this product. It's easy to mix, the instructions are super easy to follow, and here you can see that I have already mixed it, and I am just separating it into different cups with the different pigments in it, and then just mixing those until they're fully saturated. I have my different golds, some greens, some blues, and a lot of them have the Painthuffer Metal Flake that I always rave about. It's like using a really high quality glitter. I've used craft glitter as well. It just is, it's one of my favorite things to use in resin art. I feel like it adds a little extra sparkle. And then I used some of my mica pigments, and here you can see all my colors are mixed, and I am just putting a little bit of that leftover clear to hold the fire glass in place, and then I'm going to go ahead and start pouring my design. And periodically you'll see me go in with my heat gun. That's just to pop bubbles as they come up in the resin. You don't want those to stay in your piece or else they'll show up at the end. First mixture I'm using is the Mrs. Colorberry Agate Blue with the Painthuffer Metal Flake in Bluegasm. This is my favorite mixture to use with my resin painting, and I wanted to put it around the outside of those fire glass beads because it just looks so good with them. And then you can see the sparkle just like shimmering in there as I heat it, and I just think it's gorgeous. This next color, it's actually just some turquoise paint with the Poseidon metal flake mixed in, and you'll see in the next couple layers I use more of this because it just is so pretty. And then I'm going to use some of my clear just so that the underlayer, the iridescent paper, shows through. As I added more layers, I kind of covered that up a little bit, but if you're making a piece and you want it to have an iridescent quality, using clear over top of it is a good way to let that show through. Here I'm just adding a hint of that interference blue, and then I'm going in with my two favorite golds, the Maron Makeup, it's just like a bronzier gold, and then the Stardust Mica's Gold Rush, which is more of a yellow gold, and it has a little bit more of a sparkle in it. I find when you use them together, it really blends the sparkly, shimmery powder with the metallic effects, and it looks really, really nice. The next color, I'm just using some Stardust Mica's Blue Ice. It's more of a metallic shimmer and not any glitter. And then I'm going in with my Malachite and my Mary Jane Gold Flake. I love this mixture as well. You can see it sparkling already. This is just some more of that turquoise around the edge there, and then I'm just kind of blending things out using my heat gun to pop the bubbles and to kind of trigger those effects to start the colors blending together, because with resin art, that's really just the essence of what it does. And I added a tiny bit of my white powder to the interference blue and just drizzled a little bit more of that around the edges here, just to kind of trigger some more effects as those colors blend together. It's going to mix and things are going to shift, and it's just going to be really pretty. So then I'm adding more of my clear around the outside. This, again, I covered up a little bit later, but if you are making an iridescent geode or an iridescent peach, clear is your best friend when working with resin. And then here I am just starting a different section for more fireglass. I'm doing kind of like a weird shaped triangle in the corner there of just the smaller pieces. I'm not using any more of the fire diamonds because I feel like they're really the focal point in that big center area. And then I'm sealing those in with the clear resin. And just trying to make sure that all of them are covered. And then I'm going to take my metallic blue and gold and create more of a triangle shape there. So I'm just layering all my colors using the heat gun to mix them together. You can already see the colors shifting and kind of changing shape. This is the turquoise from Mrs. Colorberry, and I am adding some vase filler beads. They almost look a little bit like salt pieces, but they're like a really pale turquoise, and I just wanted to add some texture to this center ring of the geode, just to give it a little bit more something extra to make it a little bolder. And what's cool about adding the vase filler here is that it's going to kind of work with the resin and change the shape a little bit. So you'll see this blue and then the gold that I'm going to use, they will start to kind of almost look like little tendrils or fingers coming out of it as the colors shift and those little beads kind of sink to the bottom of the resin. I really like this turquoise, but I found that I like it better without any glitter mixed in. It tends to get a little thicker when I mix anything else into it. I don't know why that is. Any other pigment paste from Mrs. Colorberry I don't have that problem with, but I've learned that with this turquoise I like to just leave it just the turquoise and the resin. Here I'm just kind of rearranging, trying to keep everything in the camera frame. I'm adding some more of my fireglass on the other panel. I want to keep them similar, but I don't want them to be perfectly symmetrical. I'm keeping the focal point pretty symmetrical, so I want everything else to be consistent, but to be unique so that either panel could stand strong on their own without having to have the other part with it. I do want them to look nice together, but I don't want it to be cookie cutter copies of each other. I'm not sure if you can tell just on camera, but I am using two different shades of the fireglass here. It's the cobalt blue, and then I think it's called the azuria blue. It's just a deeper, more cerulean color, and then more of like a turquoise blue on the outside. I just want to do this so that it's not just one solid chunk of blue glass, and then I'm adding in some of my smaller vase filler from Michael's just around the edges to kind of blend it out a little bit so that it's not just these giant thick pieces of glass and then drops down to the canvas level. So this will give it a little bit of like a buffer, and I think it adds a little bit of extra sparkle to it as well. And then I'm just going to go back to pouring my rings with the resin here and kind of defining the shape that I want the piece to take on, and just repeating the steps on both sides. The camera did cut off a little bit, but I did add a second little cutout with those stone glass pieces on the left panel as well. Just defining those areas with the blue and some gold around it. Blue and gold is my absolute favorite combination to work with resin, as I'm sure you guys have figured out by now. I just love the way it looks. And then I'm adding some more of that turquoise. I think it really brings everything together, and it's just such a pretty color. So you'll notice this video is pretty long. I do this first layer, and maybe like 85% of it I was satisfied with, so I do a couple layers after this. The first one I regretted instantly, but the second layer, it actually turned out really nice, and I think I ended up liking it best. But it's all part of the process, and you'll probably wonder why I'm even doing it, but it did end up really nice at the end. So here I'm just adding some final details, drizzling a couple little bits of color in and trying to like mix them together a little bit. You'll see that I added a few other small areas of the lighter colored glass, and then I'm just going to go in with my heat gun, let it blend some things together, pop all the bubbles, and then this panel is going to have to sit and cure, and I will show you photos of the finished project in just a second. So this is what the finished first layer looks like. You can see those gold and blue kind of like tendril fingery things that I was talking about in the center. I really love that effect. I wasn't totally stoked on some areas, so I decided to pour another layer. You'll see on the left panel, I felt like it wasn't defined enough. And so in this second layer, I decided to go in and try and make some changes. I wasn't 100% thrilled with them, so if you're watching and thinking, oh my god, why did you do that? I felt the exact same way, but don't worry, I added another layer at the end, and I'm actually really pleased with how that turned out. So for fluid art, just fair warning, it never does exactly what you're expecting. There are so many different variables, and just be open to the fact that you might have to keep trying if something doesn't work out exactly how you planned. One of my favorite things about working in layers with resin art is that you can use clear to kind of let things show through. It gives some really nice depth to the piece, and it helps you to keep parts that you really like without having to totally hide the entire first layer. You can go in and cover up with your more opaque colors the areas that you're not totally thrilled with. So you'll see here I'm just going in with the same colors as the first layer, pretty much just using mostly the dark blue, the dark green, a little bit of the turquoise, and some gold, and just going over the areas that I felt didn't totally turn out the first time around. These were primarily the little almost like triangular section on the bottom right, and then on the left panel, I don't like, do you see where there's that like white triangle-y form to the left of the big cluster of stones at the bottom? I didn't like how undefined that area was, and I felt like the top left corner needed something as well. I also tried to add a little bit more blue around the stones in the center. It didn't work out exactly as I planned, but it's all part of the process. One of the things that I did think worked out really well is the area that I'm working on right here. I kind of redefined that section and made it more of a triangular shape, and the gold and the blue around the cluster of glass I thought turned out really nice. That was the main area on the left panel that I wasn't thrilled with, and I'm really glad I decided to adjust that because I didn't like the way it was the first time around, and I think adding these other colors kind of brought more into the piece. And I really, really love the way the gold ended up in that area. So here I'm just going over the parts that I really liked with the clear to make sure that I don't cover them up too much. And then you'll notice that I accidentally smudged a little bit of the dark colors and had to clean it up. The cool thing about working with resin is that usually you have like a 30 to 45 minute working time depending on the brand you're using. The mass epoxy seems to work well with that. Counterculture DIY is another one. KS resin is another one. And then during that time you can kind of adjust and work it however you need to. And you'll know that the time period is ending when it starts to clump a little bit more in your cups or gets too thick to spread. So here I'm just finishing up with a little bit of extra detailing. I'm adding some of that blue glitter mixture around those stones to cover up any of the white edges that were still there, and then I'm adding some more of that gold to the center area. I end up fixing that in the next layer, but I do like the way those colors look together. It just wasn't exactly what I was going for here. So here I'm just popping the bubbles, making sure that everything is as smooth as it can be, that I managed to get everything covered in clear. You do that so that your whole layer is even. Like there'll still be the texture from the stones and everything, but you don't want to have any gaps where the resin missed a section. That way it's like a smooth glass coat across the entire piece and there is no holes in it. Here I'm adding just a little bit of the glitter to the stones in the middle to make them look like they are just a big mass that kind of, grew that way. And then I'm just pushing it into the resin with my stir stick just to make sure that it mixes in with that clear. Then again, just popping more bubbles, spreading out the blue and that gold. And then just adding a tiny bit more of the light yellow gold in where I had put the bronzier gold. Like I said earlier, I love to use those two colors together. I think it gives it an extra something that you wouldn't get if you just use either of them on their own. And then another thing that's important is to make sure you don't overwork your piece. I think that's what I did here on that middle section. You have to know where to stop with resin art, and sometimes me personally, I just get a little carried away, so I'm trying to work on knowing when to stop. Here I just added a tiny bit of that iridescent, the interference blue. I think it's just so pretty and it's subtle enough that it adds a little bit of an extra shimmer without overtaking anything. And then just using my heat gun to kind of blend it in with the other colors. That's another good thing that the heat gun is used for. It can really like jumpstart the effects that otherwise might take a little bit longer. So this is what the piece ended up looking like after this layer. I was not thrilled with the way the center turned out, so I decided to pour one more layer and see if I could fix it. It looked fine. It's actually quite pretty with the green and the gold, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted to go for. So here I am just pouring more of that turquoise around those blue sections, and I'm gonna just let that turquoise kind of spread out. And then I'm also going to define a couple other areas, but this is the last layer I did other than the clear flood coats. So I used the turquoise, and then here I'm showing my husband and asking his opinion of what I should put where, so ignore all of my pointing, but I was trying to figure out how to define that area without overpowering it, so I ended up going with the light turquoise, and then just outlining the shape itself. And here I'm just cleaning up a little bit. Resin art can be a little bit messy, and I tend to be a very messy artist as it is, so having paper towels on hand is very important. So here I was trying to decide whether I should carry out that turquoise all the way across, but I didn't want to cover up that really cool effect where the gold and the blue had melded together. So I'm just talking it through. That's what all of my hand motions are here, but I just wanted to give you guys kind of a glimpse into my process, because it is a lot of like spur of the moment decision making for me. Something that always makes people kind of curious is that I don't visualize anything. Like, I don't see pictures in my brain. So when I do my art, everything is just kind of on the fly. So like, I'll know what colors I want to use and have a general like, okay, I'm thinking I want to put this here, but a lot of it just comes down to how it looks while I'm working on it and what feels right to me. I'll do another video on that another time if anybody's interested, about my experience with that. But again, I'm just using the clear to kind of block out the spaces that I want to leave as they are. And this time around, there are more of those. I just really needed to define a few areas because I was not 100% satisfied with the prior layer. And you can see I'm just using my gloved hands to kind of spread the resin. A little bit actually goes a pretty long way, so pour less than you think you might need, and then you can always add more. If you pour too much, you could waste it, whereas if you leave it to add a little bit at a time, you might be able to use it for a mold or something else, if there is extra. And always make sure you're using gloves. The nitrile gloves are the best, and that way you don't get the resin on your skin, because you can grow sensitive to it over time, and I have extremely sensitive skin as it is, so I don't want to risk it. Cool thing about working with artists' resins, or most resins, I guess, is that they're pretty much self-leveling. What that means is as long as your panels and your surface is level, that when you spread it out and you apply that heat, the resin will, it's liquid enough that it'll spread out and kind of balance itself so that it's an even coat across the panel. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to do the job for you, but as long as you spread it across everything and you don't miss any like giant gaping holes, it pretty much evens itself out once you've spread it. So that's really, really nice. And it makes for doing flood coats pretty easy. You just spread it across the whole thing, you know, get down on different angles, make sure you didn't miss any areas, and then as long as your panel's level, once you heat it, it spreads around and you should be good to go. So here I'm just doing my last final touches on a few areas that I wasn't totally thrilled with from the prior layer. I thought this bottom right corner looked a tiny bit muddy. So I just wanted to add a little bit more of that blue sparkly color, and then I had defined the top corner areas on both sides just a tiny bit as well. Sorry for my off-focus camera right here. It's a little difficult to film sometimes, but I think I did okay. So here is what it looked like after this layer. You can see that gorgeous sparkle and the metallic shine. And there were just a few areas that I thought needed a bit of definition. So what I did is I actually mixed my pigment powders, my mica powders, with some of my glazing medium. And then I painted on the panel like you would with any other paint. So I turned my powdered pigment to a liquid. And what's really cool about the plasticky glass-like surface of resin is before it dries, you can still wipe off most paint that you use. Once it dries, it's a little bit harder, but you can see a couple times I made a few mistakes in the shape, and I was able to just wipe it off and fix it because it hadn't dried yet. There were just a few areas where the gold kind of got a little bit taken over by the other colors I used, so I just wanted to add a little bit of the the paint, I guess is what I'll call it, just to define them a little bit, instead of having to pour a whole new resin section that I don't know if it would have ended up being as clear and crisp. The client did not want any like paint pen lines because they're a little bit too defined and they just don't always meet what somebody's looking for, but I think with painting on with the mica powder, it added some of like a metallic element, and they're thick, they're organic, it kind of goes with the shape that the painting already had. It was just basically just to clean up this layer and make sure that every area that I wanted to be defined was able to look how I wanted it to look. Sorry in advance if you can hear my cat meowing. She is yelling from the other room. Not sure if it'll pick that up or not, but just in case. And here I had to pause just to mix up a little bit more of the glazing medium and my mica powder, but I found out that doing this worked really, really well for what I needed, because I could never find paint that was as like bright and shiny as this. Like I've used the liquid gold leaf and it's pretty, but it's more brassy, and this is more of like a yellow gold, and I wanted it to match the rest of the painting and not to like totally throw it off with a different like hue of gold. So I'm really glad that this worked out. It's just like a bottle of glazing medium from Michael's, and I just mixed like a quarter size of that with just a little bit of the gold, and you can see here how beautiful and shiny and metallic it turned out. So I'm really, really pleased. So this is just a close-up of one of the panels. You can see all of that gorgeous metallic shift, all the sparkle. Here's the other one. I am so beyond pleased with how this turned out. I love all of the different shades of blue. I love the little bits of the lacing there. I like the iridescent paper that shines through where all of the fiberglass is. I'm just so happy with how this turned out, and I cannot wait to see it hanging on the wall. So this is just another flyover. And here are some close-ups of the panel. You can really see the metallic and the iridescent shift in that one. And you can see all of the glitter and how it picks up really beautifully in the natural light. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I wanted to give you a little bit more insight into my process and how not everything goes how it's planned the first time, but in the end it turned out really beautiful, and I'm glad that I took a few different risks with this piece and experimented with some new techniques because I'm really, really happy with how it turned out. I hope you enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun putting it together, and I hope to be back more regularly going forward. If you enjoyed, and if you want to see what I put out next, please subscribe to my channel, give this video a like, or drop me a comment and let me know what you think, and I will see you next time. Thanks so much. Bye.